Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Okay, so this is the episode where important people start dying. So, yeah, this episode begins with right at the very end of where the last episode left off, where I kind of made a mistake in my previous review, but it's revealed in this episode that Risotto, despite being shot point blank by Aerosmith, didn't actually die, and the boss is kind of standing victoriously over him, and Risotto is visibly upset, pointing out that he was winning and that the boss kind of cheated a little bit, but and the boss's face is notably obscured by sunbeams, and Risotto can't actually get a clear look at him, but Risotto does the boss does compliment Risotto's resolve, pointing out that he should feel honored because he was the last of his comrades to actually make it to actually finally figure out to actually finally succeed in his mission somewhat and finally figure out who the boss's identity was, and that he should be thankful that he's going into the afterlife with that knowledge, because he points out that of course he has the very distinct honor of having finally made it as their boss, and that he should be very proud of that. But he also points out that that obviously there's an inherent problem regarding Risotto's current situation, and that the gang, Team Bucciarati's gang, is actually closing in on their location and knows that they're there now. And then decides to kind of offer him a bit of mercy, pointing out that if Risotto decides to replenish his iron, he will kill him himself, and of course Risotto won't be discovered by Team Bucciarati in the sorry state that he's in. But instead Risotto starts muttering something to himself, which the boss doesn't quite clearly hear, and gets closer to try and figure out what exactly it is Risotto just said, and also asks him to speak up, at which point Risotto reveals that what he said is that he's not going down alone. And sure enough, he then proceeds to grab the boss, and then proceeds to reveal that Metallica apparently has one last trick up its sleeve that coincidentally Risotto is finally able to show off in his final moments, being that apparently in addition to being able to control metal, apparently it can also control stands if they're made of metal themselves, which is an interesting little last little resort that Risotto winds up using to try and kill the boss once and for all. Because as it turned out, coincidentally, some of Risotto's blood wound up splashing onto Aerosmith, which enables him to directly control Aerosmith as if it was his own stand. Something that Narancia quickly notices and quickly realizes that something is wrong with his stand, and this causes him and his team to actually him and the rest of the team to actually panic a little bit, because they realize something is very wrong. But in case with that now that he has Aerosmith, he now plans to actually shoot the boss and finish him off once and for all. But instead of what actually happens, the boss actually uses his King Crimson to erase half a second, just long enough for the bullets to completely phase through him, while also finishing off Risotto and not the boss, which does wind up succeeding in killing him. But that does also wind up with a very big problem, and that's but because Risotto died with his honor, which the boss does ultimately kind of congratulate him on, and does kind of point out that he was indeed a very honorable person, even in death, even as he lay dying. But pointing out that because Risotto decided to hold on to his honor, he now faces a very serious problem, and that because his body has gone anemic due to the fact that he can't actually replenish his oxygen, he's kind of slowly dying and unable to actually get away from Team Bucciarati. Meanwhile, Bucciarati and Narancia have obviously since figured out that something is wrong, and that obviously something is clearly going on up topside, and quickly pointing out that they need to quickly get out of there and leave. Narancia then points out that he feels like the enemy is probably dead, and that it's probably not worth investigating. But Abaccio, who points out that obviously very obviously they just got off a fight with Notorious Big, which of course was a stand that could come back after death. So of course he's a little bit skeptical about Narancia's claims and about how they actually finally killed the enemy stand user. But at which point Bruno and Narancia, they actually decide to go and get Giorno and Mista, and so that they can actually keep an eye on Abaccio while he's doing his replay. And since it's been established that Muted Blues can't actually attack while he's replaying, he's trying to replay something, and then proceeds to ask Abaccio how long he needs. And when Abaccio responds that he's probably going to need at least several minutes, since he's rewinding to something that took place 15 years prior. Bruno then assures him that he needs to actually do it as quickly as possible, since they also have no idea if there's any enemy stands that are also on the beach as well, and they don't even know how many of the boss's men are actually still around. So for that reason, he basically just tells Abaccio to hurry up, and then he and Narancia go and get Giorno and Mista out of Coco Jumbo, and then proceed to go and investigate the fight that just transpired. While the boss slowly tries to escape, and is also currently trying to replenish his energy by eating the local wildlife. Basically, he at one point while he's trying to flee and hides behind a rock to get out of eyesight of Narancia and Bruno, he actually winds up picking up a frog and eating it and sucking its blood so that he can regain some of his own iron and replenish himself that way, which is kind of gross, but also kind of hardcore, and I do kind of like it. But in any case, upon arriving at the fight where Risotto and the boss actually fought briefly, they actually do notice Risotto's body, although they admit that they don't really know what Risotto looks like, and also admit that they don't even know if it is indeed Risotto. But and of course, to be fair, they haven't met Risotto Nero. They never actually fought him or saw him or anything like that. They slowly fought several of the different assassins that they've been encountering throughout the series and throughout the first half of the anime, but they haven't met Risotto. He's kind of been just doing his own thing in the shadows, so nobody's actually really met him yet. So yeah, of course they don't fully recognize him, but they conclude that since he's alone, he's either an assassin who got really... Bruno concludes that he's either an assassin who either got really cocky and decided to go off and fight Team Bucciarati on his own, or more accurately, he is someone who had no comrades to actually back him up and had to fight on his own. And Bruno concludes that it's likely the latter, but also proceeds to point out that they should be wary because obviously he thinks there's another enemy around. And Narancia obviously scoffs at this, pointing out that of course that his Aerosmith was the one who finished him off and that he ultimately got no fight with his Aerosmith and lost. But Bruno then proceeds to point out that there's clearly more going on, and points out that Narancia was likely just being used as whoever else was doing the fighting, and then uses the fact that Risotto is currently missing a foot as a perfect claim for that, because obviously Risotto lost his foot in the fight against Doppio and the boss. Of course Bucciarati quickly puts two and two together, and noticing that it doesn't seem like something that Aerosmith did, he concludes that whoever attacked Risotto is likely still around somewhere, and proceeds to ask Narancia to try and use his Aerosmith to try and find out where the older enemy actually is. And of course Narancia then proceeds to do exactly this, but he then points out that he's having quite a bit of difficulty. As we find out, he's having a difficulty adjusting the sensitivity of his sensor on Aerosmith. So in addition to picking up all the local wildlife, but he's also picking up all the tourists that are nearby. So he's having a very difficult time of actually finding out where the boss is actually hiding, and he doesn't even know it's the boss, so he has no idea who he's actually looking for. But of course, Bruno then proceeds to reassure him, pointing out that he just needs to stay calm and focus, and that he will eventually find him, and that all he really needs to do is to look for some very low-level breathing that is clearly moving away from them. And sure enough, after focusing for a bit, Narancia does indeed discover somebody that is moving away from him very slowly and has a very faint breathing. So concludes that that's the person they're likely looking for, and runs in that general direction, with Bruno following closely behind. And And sure enough, as Narancia quickly discovers, they actually see a pair of legs disappear behind a rock, and concluding that it's most likely their man, Bruno then proceeds to kind of announce who he is, and declares that he's going to attack them and possibly kill the person behind the rock unless they reveal themselves. And if they don't reveal themselves, then within the next 3 seconds, then he'll conclude that they're actually an enemy and proceed to attack them without mercy. And then proceeds to wait 3 seconds with both Aerosmith and Sticky Fingers at the ready. And then when of course the person doesn't come out from behind the rock, Bucciarati immediately destroys his cover with Sticky Fingers, just ripping it apart with his zippers to kind of get at whoever's behind the rock. And what they discover is actually a youth with pink hair who, as they've quickly discovered, much to their horror, has had his mouth sewn shut with his own shoelaces and has a large slit taken out of his wrist, and is clearly lost a lot of blood. And as Bruno concludes, he quickly realizes that only a stand user could have done this. And they also point out that if whoever was the stand user actually did this, then where's the other person that attacked him? And sure enough, incidentally, Abbacchio is actually currently working on his replay, and with Giorno and Miso watching him from a vantage point to make sure nobody can sneak up on him. And of course, what we find out is that Abbacchio apparently is just sitting there waiting, and he's bored out of his mind because obviously Moody Blues is taking a very long time to try and actually find the thing that Trish is remembering, and doesn't even know if she's actually remembering it right, as he remarks, because as he finds out through his replay, they're quickly nearing the end of June, and as in June 15 years ago, which is what he's trying to find. But since his replay is telling him that he's on the 25th, and he's clearly running out of time to actually find out which date is, so he does not even sure if he should actually trust Trish's judgment or not. But AK says as he's doing his rewind, a group of kids who are actually playing soccer actually wind up. They're actually playing soccer nearby, but they accidentally kicked their soccer ball into a nearby tree. And they can't reach it, and they're having a lot of difficulty actually climbing up to the tree and actually getting it out of the tree. And Abbacchio is kind of annoyed by this, and even tells them to shove off and clear out, pointing out that it's not that he has important work that he's trying to do. But of course, when he realizes that they actually can't get the soccer ball, he eventually decides to actually go and help them, and actually winds up scooping up the soccer ball and getting it out of the tree for them, much to the children's happiness. And then he's suddenly attacked by King Crimson and has a hole punched through his stomach. As we find out, the boss, using Doppio's very uncanny appearance to the pink-haired youth from earlier, actually wound up infiltrating the group of kids, and so that he could get close to Abbacchio and kick the ball into the tree on purpose, so that Abbacchio would have no choice but to become within his range. And then he also points out that it's great to be home, and then proceeds to walk off, leaving Abbacchio to die while Moody Blues crumbles nearby. And yeah, it's a very sad moment where Abbacchio is dying, and what's even worse is that he doesn't even realize he's dead afterwards, because we then cut to a scene of him eating lunch, and it's notably a very gray and very desaturated scene where clearly it's not supposed to be like this. It's clearly that's an artistic choice. Clearly the color was sapped from the scene for a perfectly good reason, and we do find out why. Because Abbacchio is currently eating lunch, and he then proceeds to hear clinking coming from the table next to him, and upon looking under it, discovers a police officer and wonders what the police officer is doing. And the police officer merely tells him that he's gathering evidence for a case, and that he thinks that somebody was apparently assaulted with a bottle that is currently broken, and he's scooping up the pieces for. And then proceeds to point out that he hopefully will be able to find some fingerprints, because he's not only trying to find where the bottle was gripped so that he can actually have a clear, conclusive evidence for a case. And it's at this point, and Abbacchio kind of understands, but then decides to ask a bit of a personal question about pointing out that of course he wonders how the cop is able to actually continue doing his duty despite knowing how corrupt Italy is, and especially in terms of cops, and how he continues to do his duty in the best of his service despite all of that, and of course the cop merely answers that that all he's really trying to do, that of course if he's only trying to look for the results, then that would actually lead to his corruption as a cop, but he's actually leading to actually find the best truth that he can and actually make sure that the job is done to the thoroughest of its ability, and also points out that because of that he has a bit of honor in him, and Baccio then kind of solemnly acknowledges that, but also points out that he feels like he lost his honor a long time ago, and points out that he wishes he were like the cop, and points out that he wishes he was able to hold himself as highly as the cop does, but points out that he blew his chance a long time ago, and that he's likely never going to be able to have that sort of honor and diligence in his job again. But the officer then proceeds to point out that that's not true, and that he has actually conducted himself very well, and then also reveals that he actually knows Baccio, and Baccio is obviously very confused since he never told the cop his name and wonders how he knows him, but that also points out that he feels like he's seen the cop before, but then remembers that his team actually needs him, and decides to, and noticing a nearby bus, he decides to get on and tells the cop that that's what he's doing, but then the cop then proceeds to point out that that's not going to work since he literally just came off of that bus, and Baccio is then a little bit visibly confused, but then he realizes why he actually recognizes the cop, which is that the cop is actually his former partner, and then he proceeds to put two and two together and quickly realizes that if he's talking to his dead partner, that his partner, who he knows is dead, and he's currently talking to him, then he quickly puts two and two together and realizes that he's also dead, which causes him to start crying. But Baccio's partner merely reassures him, telling him that he did the best that he could, and that he should know that he died doing the best that he could, and that he ultimately has died with honor. And sure enough, then we actually cut back to what's actually going on, and what we find out is that the rest of Team Bucciarati, I want to call it the Joestar group, but it's not the Joestar group in this one, but Team Bucciarati has actually discovered Baccio's body and discovered that he has actually since bled out and has died, and of course everybody is very visibly distraught, and Narancia is kind of taking it the hardest, and to the point where he's completely in denial about the fact that Baccio is dead, and also protests that Giorno should actually revive him, but of course everybody else realizing that Baccio is dead, decide to ultimately move on, pointing out that the beach likely doesn't have anything else for them, since obviously the only thing they had was Moody Blues' replay, and Moody Blues can't really do its replay anymore because its user is dead. But so Bruno tries to move on, but of course again Narancia is very much in denial about the fact that Baccio is dead, and also points out that he'll actually try and fight whoever it was that actually attacked Baccio, and also points out that he'll likely wake up at any second, but of course we know that that's not actually going to happen, and eventually Giorno then gets up, telling Narancia to actually listen to Bruno's orders, and that they're actually supposed to, and that they should actually do what Bruno asks and move on, but of course Narancia points out that Narancia is completely confused about why Giorno's saying this, and then despite Misa trying to break the two of them up, the two of them then proceed to get into a bit of a shoving match where of course Narancia calls Giorno lazy for not trying to heal Baccio, but in the process they actually wind up nudging Baccio's body, and when he doesn't move, Narancia finally realizes that Baccio is indeed dead. And also asks if they're going to actually leave him, and that they need to give him a proper burial, which of course is what everybody wants to do, and of course they also realize that they need to leave his body there because obviously they can't really take it with them and give it a proper burial, but then it's at this point where as they're trying to leave, Giorno actually notices something clutched in Baccio's hand, and noting that it's actually a piece of stone, he then proceeds to conclude that there's likely something important regarding it, and looking more closely at it, notices that it definitely came somewhere, and using his gold experience to turn it into a ladybug. He then proceeds to ask the ladybug to return to where it came from, and of course it immediately does, and it leads them to the statue near where Abbacchio died. And what we find out is that despite the boss's best efforts, Abbacchio did manage to finish his replay with Moody Blues, and in his final moments used the last of his stand power to actually create a death mask of the boss's face. So they finally know what the boss looks like. When we sort of know what the boss looks like, because he's been switching between Vinegar Doppio and himself. So at this point, we kind of know what he looks like, but I mean, not a very clear thing. But we do finally have a very clear picture of what the boss actually looks like. So I'm going to picture it. But in case realizing that Abbacchio didn't die in vain, they quickly realized that now they actually have a solid lead to actually track down the boss and finish him off. And after turning Abbacchio's body into a field of flowers using gold experience and shattering the monument so that nobody knows that the boss's death mask is there, and so that the boss doesn't know that they actually finished his replay despite his best efforts, they then proceed to leave to go and finally confront him, while Abbacchio and his partner watch from heaven and finally acknowledge that now Abbacchio has finally given everything he can to actually make sure that his team can actually finish the job that they set out to do. So yeah, first and foremost, there's a couple. The main. This is actually where the next break is, and this is actually going to be a perfect place to leave it off because I got a major project that I'm going to be doing for the next month, and I've been hyping up a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to be doing that for a bit, and we're probably not going to be seeing JoJo's Bizarre Adventure for a while, and or anything else that I'm currently reviewing for that matter, or playing, or whatever else. But yeah, in any case, to break this down, this is like the final part of this part of the second arc where they are trying to figure out the boss's identity, and they finally have done it at the cost of one of their own dying. So yeah, of course, this does kind of leave little bit of a capstone for the next part of the series to build into, namely that now the group have figured out that the boss's identity at the cost of Abbacchio's life, and of course the last of the Hitman team has actually died, but now we're going to be moving into the final arc of this, where they're going to finally be able to confront the boss and figure out who he is and what exactly is going on with him, and then they're going to try and figure out what his identity is, and then possibly confront the rest of his special unit to actually get to him, and eventually have to fight the boss himself. So yeah, I'm interested to see how that's going to go. I'm not sure if it's going to go well, because we've established that the boss is basically invincible because of his King Crimson and its ability to both see into the future and also rewind and also erase 10 seconds from that time period that he sees. So yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to go, but I'm curious to see how the rest of the story is going to go. If they're going to introduce something for that's going to actually explain what's going on with that, and I am interested to see how the rest of the story is going to go. But for the time being, we're going to be taking a break to work on something else. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy this review, then be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. I basically just post all of my links and stuff over there, so be sure to go check those out. Link is down in the description. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent one. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. As the next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!